At Arizona State University, we've made online education better, smarter, and more personalized so you can go further in your aspiring field. I decided to pursue medicine once I realized that ASU did have the online program for biological sciences. You're still required to learn the same curriculum. You're still being tested on the same content that anyone would be tested on in person. The comprehensiveness of the program prepared me so well for medical school. Explore over 300 programs at asuonline.asu.edu.
We interrupt this program to bring you an important Wayfair message. Wayfair's got style tips for every home. This is Nicole Byer, helping you make those rooms flyer. Today's style tip: when it comes to making a statement, treat bold patterns like neutrals. Go wild! Like an untamed animal print area rug under a rustic farmhouse table from Wayfair.com. Ooh, fierce! This has been your Wayfair style tip to keep those interiors superior.
Wayfair, every style, every home.
At Arizona State University, we've made online education better, smarter, and more personalized so you can go further in your aspiring field. I decided to pursue medicine once I realized that ASU did have the online program for biological sciences. You're still required to learn the same curriculum. You're still being tested on the same content that anyone would be tested on in person. The comprehensiveness of the program prepared me so well for medical school. Explore over 300 programs at asuonline.asu.edu.
Stop right there. Yeah, you. If you like all things entertainment, current events, or Hollywood, then look no further. Creator to Creators, hosted by director Meosha of Horror Noir, interviews filmmakers and creatives from around the world. Join in on the fun, guest celebrities, and informative information to have as a creator. Hit subscribe and stay connected to Creator to Creators.
Hi guys, welcome to another episode of Creators to Creators today. Today we have a special guest.
Zeke Hindle. I'm an actor, producer, and entertainment attorney.
That's amazing. So tell me, I'm just really happy to have you on. It's been a long time since I've actually seen you. It's been some years now, but it's really good to see you. And thank you for coming on and sharing your story with us. Tell me a little bit about like your childhood, kind of like what that was like, and how did you find your way into doing the things that you're doing now?
Well, yeah. So I was, my dad was, a famous actor, I guess, in Canada. He was a working actor in LA, doing quite a bit of pilots and, recurring roles on series. And then he got a big job working ENG. It was sort of a TV newsroom, sort of on the level of Friends, type thing in Canada. He got the lead role, so it was a big deal for him. Unfortunately, that kind of hurt me a little bit because he had to move away, and then my mom didn't want to move to Toronto, so it was sort of like led to their divorce, which, I don't want to be talking about that, unfortunately. But basically, I would kind of spend time in Toronto and then come back, and the industry wasn't quite as solid in Toronto as it is now. But basically he won a Gemini for that, which was like the equivalent of an Emmy, which is pretty amazing. And I was on set. I kind of grew up on set. So he kind of threw me into child acting stuff. And actually I had a mental breakdown on set.
Oh my God.
Where like the director wanted me to eat hot dogs and say, seafood or something. And then like I open my mouth and there's like hot dogs in it or whatever. And I don't know, I just had a mental breakdown, and my dad felt bad that he was forcing me to do that or whatever. And then I did some other commercials and other things and photo shoots long story short, I went away from acting. When I was in 5th grade, I did a play and then kind of got the acting bug for a little while longer, and then went away from it, and then turned pro in tennis. That was kind of my independent thing that I could do away from that. And as I got off the tour, I started doing real estate, and then realized I wanted to kind of get back into acting and kind of being more creative, because I wasn't, itching my creative scratch, so to speak. And pretty much just started kind of grinding from the bottom. And I felt like I wanted to create my own content. As auditioning is not very fun. So I pretty much felt like I want to create my own stuff. and
Yeah.
I created Happenstance. That was really cool. Me and my buddy Joel O'Neill, we've been working on shorts for about 6 months, and we ended up kind of creating this sort of partial true to life thing, sort of with me myself 3 years earlier. And I was able to kind of reenact certain parts of it, but it was about half true, half not. And we ended up getting to kind of doing the festival circuit and getting to Cannes, and then we ended up selling it to a distributor. So it was really, really amazing. And then just continually grinding. We did get a little screwed over by the distributor, so that motivated me to become an entertainment attorney. And
Yeah, and exactly.
that's
And you did it. And you did it.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I remember signing a pretty bad contract early on. I was very green, and it was so devastating because you're thinking, well, I got a distribution deal and it's going to be on these websites. It's going to be out on DVD. It's going to be over here. But then you're like, wait a minute, I have 10 years with them on this contract. I can't get out. Like, and that's really the fine print, like really knowing what you're really getting into. It's kind of almost like selling your soul or selling your baby over to someone else. And
Yeah, I
then
felt
you
like the
see,
baby thing for sure. Yeah.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
like, oh my gosh.
Yeah. I
So,
mean, we
I
got
mean,
lucky and made half our money back prior to that, just kind
that's
of doing
good.
festival stuff and this and that. It was a very low budget. It was like 50K out the door, and we had a good script, good stuff. People really liked it, but yeah, it was about a year, and then with the option for 3 years with the distributor, and I felt like, kind of trapped at that point. And I was realizing like, wow, like I'm really in a tough position, and I want to figure out how to help people as well as myself,
Yeah.
not get in, protect creatives basically, because a lot of creatives don't think about that. And I wanted to protect creatives pretty much.
Yeah, I mean and I thank you for doing that. I mean, I think for me, it's like how does the company still stay in business when there's so many people that they screw over? I don't understand that.
Yeah, I don't know. It's sort of a little bit Ponzi-ish scheme-y, they just kind of keep moving on to the next and kind of get enough, and then they kind of do all the loopholes and screw people over basically. And but there's great companies out there. You just got to find the right, your right tribe. And then I think that is kind of what it's all about, is finding the right people at the right times for yourself, and obviously getting lucky a little bit too, and all that. So.
Yeah, I mean, I would what would you categorize yourself? Would you say that you are a entrepreneur, like you do it all? Because I mean, you've done real estate. That I mean, you just would you say that you just don't want to limit yourself? Is that because it's like you don't want to put yourself in a box and you want to do whatever you want to do?
I mean, for me, like I kind of alluded to with early on in my career, so to speak, with child acting, let's say, I realized sort of, the dark side, let's say, of, Hollywood.
If you work as a manufacturing facilities engineer, installing a new piece of equipment can be as complex as the machinery itself. From prep work to alignment and testing, it's your team's job to put it all together. That's why it's good to have Grainger on your side. With industrial-grade products and next-day delivery, Grainger helps ensure you have everything you need close at hand through every step of the installation. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Lowe's knows how to help you save this 4th of July. Upgrade your laundry routine with the new and exclusive first-of-its-kind all-in-one vented laundry combo. Wash and dry in just 68 minutes. Save up to 40% on select major appliances. Plus, when you buy more, you save more. Shop Samsung this July 4th at Lowe's. Valid through 7/9. See Lowe's.com for details. Savings vary based on purchase amount. Selection varies by location. Lowe's knows how to set off your July 4th with savings. Right now, buy one, get one free on select one-coat coverage interior paint via Visa gift card rebate. Plus, get 2 select 2 or 2.5 quart red, white, and blue annuals for just $10. Hurry, these July 4th deals won't last long. Lowe's, we help, you save. Valid through 7/9. Selection varies by location. While supplies last, excludes Alaska and Hawaii. More terms and restrictions apply. See Lowe's.com/rebates for more details.
Early on. And, my dad, guided me quite a bit. And basically he's like, oh, wow, you're much more, you're thinking about like the big picture much more than I did. Cause he was kind of a pure actor, a pure sort of artist. Right. And I'm more so, kind of practical sort of, I've been, highly educated, not to say he didn't graduate high school. Right. And my mom didn't graduate college. So it's like, I'm the first one to kind of pave the way with that, which they helped me do that. Right.
Right.
But it's sort of like a thing where, I kind of think about it. I can't help but think about it from a bigger picture, mindset. I can drop in and do acting and do that. And it's very fun. Like I love acting. It's like amazing. There's not many more things in my life other than playing like a big tennis tournament, type thing. Now my body can't really do that anymore. But that right, that feeling, that high, that buzz, that actors, thing that you get is amazing. I just feel like there's, I want to pave the way for myself as well as others to have a healthy environment to do that. So everyone has a win-win. I know it sounds corny, but that's, most projects I get on, that's sort of what I want to do. I don't want to exploit anyone. I don't want to have a negative experience for people. I want it to be a fun, creative environment. And that's why I do like indie films. And I've kind of gone out of my way to do more indie films because it usually is more that kind of environment.
Yeah. And it's interesting that you talk about the dark side of Hollywood because it seems like a lot of that now is coming out more on the forefront. I mean, it's been around for many years, and this kind of dark cloud that they say Holly weird. You see that the documentary Quiet on Set, the dark side of child acting. I literally just finished watching, and it was really hard to watch.
Yeah, I worked with Josh Peck too in an acting class with Sharon
yeah.
Chatton too, and it's tough for everybody.
Yeah, and I'm just glad that people are sharing that and showing that because I've always been a believer that I think child acting is that's a really tough age, and they're so young and pure, and you there's no way to always be around the kids, and you I mean you can't really trust everyone, and it was just wow. So I'm glad that we're talking about it now, I guess.
Yeah,
More
I
so.
mean, it's tricky because, as a producer, let's say if I put on the producer hat, you need kids to act in movies, right? But it also, if you have them leading the movies, I feel like it's sort of a tricky situation because they have to go through so many emotions they don't understand. A lot of people around them trying to take advantage of them. It's a very, very tricky situation. And, obviously, I think California's done a good job, although, stringent, right, with the legal side of it. They really do protect minors, so that's good. But I just feel like emotionally, mentally, you got even like the Leo DiCaprio, right? It's like, for example, him being on the set of Growing Pains or whatever, or even before that, I forget what the name is, but him getting maybe molested or this or that, like it and that goes down the laundry list, or even just the other side of it where you're not getting, let's say sexually assaulted, right? You're actually getting stardom that young and you don't know what to do with it. That's a whole other ballgame too, where you can't get that, let's say, high anymore, with anything else. And it's kind of a tough situation to be in too. And they say a lot of people like, they kind of are who they are when they got famous. And that's tricky too, because it just sort of gets you stuck in this sort of let's say immature state, right? So I don't know.
Yeah, and it is very tricky, and it scares me because it's like how can something so like monumental like Nickelodeon and those kind of things or Disney can kind of allow people, I guess, not doing background checks or really thoroughly checking people's credentials and really doing their work. But and if it's that's kind of what blows my mind. It's like, how is this allowed? But I
I
guess it
think
just
it's
starts
coming
with
to light.
awareness.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think it's coming to light more. I mean, there's a gift and a curse with social media. There's a gift and a curse with all these things. But I do think it promotes sort of awareness, like you're saying, for better or worse. And I do think there's situations where that's good and bad. But I think in this case, right, it's good because, you want people
Yeah.
to, the more awareness, the better. Like if people are aware of that, they won't do it, right? Like if enough people are like on set with, social media with, cameras on their phone, there's less opportunities. I think back then, in the 80s, 90s, even before that, it was, there wasn't that, there wasn't like documentarians on the set, right? So,
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. You spoke about your feature film. Can you kind of elaborate a little bit about like your experience on co-creating, writing, and directing and producing your first feature film, Happenstance? Like, more in the detail of like how that, like the process that come along, and I guess, and then why Happenstance?
yeah, so I was, like I said, I was kind of coming out of tennis, which kind of trains you to be sort of a robot, let's say, right? It's
Mm,
not like you don't want to be too up, too down. You want to just be steady. You want to be that. So I kind of trained myself. I was an outgoing guy and grew up in the thing and, all that and love having fun. But then I kind of formed myself after 3 years on the tennis tour to be sort of this way. And then I was like, wow, I have all these connections with real estate, country club style connections. I'm like, wow, I can make a living doing this. But
mm-hmm.
I'm not, I'm kind of like, I feel almost antisocial at this point. And I had to
I
like break
see.
out of my own shell. So I'm like, oh, I'll take some acting classes kind of to break out of my own shell, really. And then started taking acting classes kind of the first time I ever did a scene. I was like, the whole world like shrunk down. And I was like, what is going on? I couldn't even like say anything or do anything. And it was, and but then it kind of slowly started breaking through over the weeks and coming back, just keep coming back. And I
Yeah.
got through tennis, kind of just keep coming back, keep trying, keep trying. And then, you'll learn. And, if you have the right attitude, you got to just be patient with yourself and keep grinding. And then I met the right people kind of, and I didn't, know how to write a script. I didn't know how to do these things, but I met people like that. I had story ideas. I had kind of co-writing, enough to where, and then, when we were on set, we had a little room for improv.
Mm-hmm.
So there was things like that going on. But we actually originally shot it sort of as like an actor's reel thing, and we had friends that we wanted to include in it. So we kind of wrote around, it was sort of like, I hate to say like the La La Land thing,
Yeah.
where you write
Mm-hmm.
around the person's personality, right? It's like you actually are
Right.
writing for them. And Joel O'Neill was amazing like that. He can kind of, see through people, right? He can kind of see that's you, this, and that. And he did that with me. He did that with a lot of other people. I mean, we had a ton of cast in this, and it was sort of like a collage of people coming in and out. Um, it was great. I mean, we would have done a lot of things different, obviously, but we kind of got to the point where we had something going. So we shot like a third of it, and then we raised a little more money, and then shot a third of it, and then shot a third
Yeah.
of it within about 3 months. So we were kind of shooting on weekends, shooting around people's other schedules. We had some actors that were doing other work and people that have full-time jobs. So we were trying to shoot around everything. And it ended up actually coming out pretty good. And
I love
so
that.
but it took about 2 years on the festival circuit, and then we got the can, and then it was the market, the can market, but that was we had to qualify for that, and then we got in, and then luckily enough we met a distributor, and then it worked out. But yeah, I was there for 2 weeks kind of hustling at
Nice.
sales in can, and then finally we got somebody. Yep.
That's awesome. That's really, really cool. So tell me a little bit also too, you have your hands in politics. I love that. And please elaborate. What made you go into politics and in that world, you know?
Actually, yeah. So when I was in law school, I was studying constitutional law, and
Love that.
I'm kind of your typical Democrat California guy. But I also grew up with my grandpa in Tennessee and Pennsylvania, who was a typical Republican, not like a MAGA Trump guy, just like sort of a smart, savvy Republican that was sort of middle of the road. And he worked in politics. He worked for Eisenhower. He worked for JFK. He worked
Nice.
for Lyndon Johnson Ford. After that, Nixon. And then when Jimmy Carter came in, he left. And then he was actually one of the first lobbyists. So he was one of the first guys to kind of start using his political connections to get companies like AstraZeneca specifically. Now it gets kind of a bad name, but back then, they do a lot of good too, right? It's like not all bad. So anyway, he did that. And so I feel not kind of spiritually connected to that. But, you start to kind of get in the world and, I realized with constitutional law, like we got to participate in our democracy or else it will change for better or worse. So, um, whatever your opinion is, I welcome all opinions, like
That's
I
good.
mean, we got to be careful because, we don't want to be, destroying America because I feel like I've traveled all over the world with tennis and I feel like America is the best country I've ever been at, LA, I think it's the best city in the world, but I'm biased because I was born here. And I love it. But, I think we need to get involved with our government or else other people will. And I think other people may not have the best of intentions, or other
Right.
countries like Russia or whatever might try to undermine us to weaken us so that they have more strength, so that's kind of what motivated me. And then also, my buddy, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., I've known him for about 4 years. I was interning for him, kind of during COVID. And I was like, wow, this guy's speaking the truth during COVID. And then, I went on a hike with him the first day that he declared. And then I was like, what can I do for you? And sort of then I started a super PAC. And then, after about 6-9 months, it was sort of getting too dramatic. So I felt like I need to kind of step away and I need to do more nonpartisan stuff. So I created a Mobilizing Civic Engagement, which is sort of a nonpartisan entity to promote voter registration
Nice.
in general, because, I don't mind who you vote for. I just want people to vote and get involved.
Right. Right. Absolutely. How do you feel like the state of like everything and how how everything's going right now in politics? I mean, it's interesting what we see. Do you feel like we're heading in a better direction with
I don't
how
know. I mean,
everything's going?
it's tricky. It's, and I'm not privy to everything. But I feel like it's, we got Joe Biden, like, I supported him in 2020. I was sort of an anti-Trump guy, and I agree with like about, 30% of what Trump says. I'm glad like he's up there saying some stuff, but the other 70% is just like shocking and horrible. And he's just kind of a narcissist all about himself, basically.
Mm,
And Biden, does some good stuff and he's a good delegator and he has good people on his thing, on his administration. But, I think he's too old. I think he's out of it. I think, we need some new blood in there. That's why I like Bobby. I know him personally, so I know how open he is to certain things, and I think there's things where, he can evolve his position on, but
mm,
he's open to evolving. It's not like a politician where, he's not going to address what he was wrong about. It's not like he's going to, shut down when it comes to sort of learning and, being like, I was wrong about that and I'm changing my opinion. And yeah, I think he's kind of tapping into this independent, sort of vibe that's now happening to where, it's not the polarizing bipartisan thing, boom, 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 back and forth where we're fighting each other. I think there's a middle ground now that is a beautiful thing, and healthy debate is very important to me, and
I
I'm down.
love that.
Yeah.
Healthy debate. You're absolutely right. I think a lot of times, I think it was, I don't know, I was watching something with the Candace Owens and Shapiro talking about something about like just they, they don't obviously see eye to eye on everything, and I don't think anyone sees eye to eye with everyone on on the Daily Wire, but they were talking about just how we have to have these conversations, because if we don't, I mean, then we're just no better. We're fighting each other and nothing's getting done. So absolutely, absolutely agree with that. I just hope things get better. Like I said, all we can do is just hope people will vote. And that's just that's the wish and prayer that things will, people will vote and get out there, and hopefully things will change for the better. That's
Yeah.
I don't know, but
Yeah. I just
yeah.
feel like if, people think their vote doesn't count, right? There's a lot of apathy. There's also a lot of, now voter fraud stuff, which, there might be a little bit of that, but it's not as prevalent as the Trump supporters say, let's say. But yeah, I just feel like people need to understand that their vote counts, that they need to get out there and get involved, especially locally. I think like, the presidential, election's great, but hyper local, I've had a lot of, friends of mine like Eric Swalwell, for example, Bobby himself too, that it's just local, local, local. You got to start local with your, city council, right? Even your neighborhood associations, right? There's a lot of like unofficial neighborhood associations or homeowners associations that are important. And then you go up to county level, right? Depending on the structure of the government, and then the state, and then, you know, the nation, right? With your congressmen, senators, and then the president. But yeah, you just need to understand government. I think we should all take more civics classes, because I was in constitutional law, and I'm like, oh my God, I don't know the first thing about this. And then I felt bad, and then I kind of just forced myself to learn a lot. And then I took a government elective class in my last year as I was studying for the bar. And, I was like,
Nice.
wow, this is, I didn't know any of this. So, I think we need to learn how government works, because there's a lot of like, let's say, I mean, look again, like Black Lives Matter, these things, that thing, I think they're all good movements, don't get me wrong. It's just, you can't tear down sort of you can't tear down a good thing, right? Just
Yeah, yeah,
that you don't agree with it, right? Like,
right.
because the revolutionaries always become the tyrants, right? Like if you look throughout history, it's always something where the revolutionaries think they can do it differently, but then by the time they get there, like, wow, this is actually, there's a reason these people were acting like that. So I think there's something to be said for learning about how government works, so we can change from within, because I
Right.
think coming from without and destroying it is not the solution, right? We got to learn about it,
Absolutely.
come from within, change people's hearts and minds, really. And it's hard, like running for, like, just even the last 6 9 months, like with Bobby, like, man, it's hard what we're doing, and you get a lot of flack, and it takes a lot of energy, and it's not even there's another 6 months to do. So it's tricky and it's hard, and for some reason people think they can just totally say the worst things to politicians, and they have no
Mm,
feelings. But I've gotten attacked myself, and it's not fun. It hurts you.
mm.
And, it's also like when you get criticized for a film, it's like an art, right? And it's like you
Right.
get criticized. That was hurting me when I got criticized. And then, but then politics is like personal, it's like, so it's kind of crazy, but, it's definitely toughened me up. You kind of, if you can weather the blows and kind of keep going, you do get tougher. And, it makes me appreciate, creating art though more,
Absolutely.
too. And art's very important too, because that can change hearts and minds as well. So it's a balance, I think.
Absolutely. Well, I have a fun question, and there's no wrong answers, but the three levels of influence: money, power, and respect. And if you could choose one of those things, which one would you choose and why?
I think respect, I would say. I think that's as I've been going around doing all these things, no matter if you're like a prisoner in jail or, the running for president, like I think respect is the most important thing to me because it makes you feel like an individual and, respected as like in my opinion, a piece of God, let's say, right? Like
Mhm.
everyone's a part of this whole universe. And I think that respects I think it's the foundation. Obviously, money and power, money can be, good and bad, right? But I think it's a tool. And then I think that can lead to power or, you don't necessarily need money for power, but our society's pretty structured in a way where money is power. But
Yeah.
there's different ways to do it. But I think respect, and love and respect, right? Respect is love, I think. So I think inevitably, if the golden rule, right? Love one another,
Yeah.
as you would love yourself. Well, a lot of people don't love themselves though. That's the problem.
That's true.
But I
That's
think
true.
that's the idea, right? Love yourself, and then that everything flows from that, right?
Absolutely. I love that. That's a great answer. Um, well, it's time is winding down, but if you could give some advice to anyone out there listening, that want to go out and maybe get into the entertainment world and or politics or whatever, what advice would you give to that person?
I'd say just do it, the Nike
Yeah.
quote. I got Nike shorts on right now, actually. It's hard to tell because we're doing the Zoom thing, but basically, yeah, I think just do it. Like, I think, I wasn't ready for anything I went through on both the happenstance front and even now, like with pilots we're producing and these things and kind of doing, a small time production company as well, because I love keeping creative. I think creativity is very, very important. It motivates me to other things. It's an outlet for me, to give me the strength to do sort of the grunt work in society organizing, like Obama. I love Obama. And he, started as an organizer in Chicago, and I feel like you got to organize the people around you to get motivated to make a difference, because we can make a difference on our own, but you have to start with the things around you changing and
Yeah.
then kind of evolving from there. But yeah, I feel like just kind of, obviously learn as much as you can before, kind of figure everything out, educate yourself prior to what you're getting into, but you're never going to feel ready. I think you got to just do it,
True.
and you got to kind of get out there and just do it, like, and then you learn, but be open to learning while you're doing it. Don't, you can make mistakes, of course, and that's how you learn. Like, my failures have taught me way more than my successes. I know
Hmm.
that's kind of the classic, sounds corny thing, but it's really true. Like it's like you kind of can get, out there and, it hurts. You got to be willing to go through sort of the pain of it, but it's growing pains. Like I try to, tell myself the anxiety, right, that you feel or the stress you feel is actually energy. I did that
Yeah.
in tennis where I felt like, oh my God, I'm stressed. I'm like afraid and this and that. But actually, that's what I feel when I'm having fun too. So it's the same
Mm.
thing in your brain and your body when you're, having fun and excited about something as to when you're stressed. We kind of trick ourselves into thinking one's stress and one's fun, but it's
Yeah.
a similar thing. So, it's like when you go on set, right, and you're doing your thing and you've committed all this time, like for your projects, for example, it's like, you kind of build the whole thing and then you're going and you're, freaking out, but it's also like exciting, and you're like,
Yeah.
"Ah, this is what I'm doing, and this is what I meant to do." So it's exciting in that way, and I just feel like, people should just don't sit there on the sideline too much and overthink. Sometimes you got to think enough to plan and do it, and then just go out there and do it and be okay with failing. Don't worry about it, because, the truth is, like, people forget too, right? People, like, if you fail and don't do good, like, and you do good the next time, people, you know, don't remember that other one. They'll remember the
Right.
next one. It's like, what have you done for me lately, for better or worse? Like, if you do a
Right.
great, then you got to keep it up, which is hard too, right? Or if
Yeah.
you become famous, or whatever, then you got to keep it up and you got to do better and
Yeah.
better, which is hard too. So it's just everyone going through stuff. Everyone has a hard time, really. And I think people need to realize, like, no one's perfect. No one's got it all figured out. And we need to, love each other more and just, yeah, come from that place.
I love that. That's beautiful. Anything you're working on, any that you'd like to share with
Yeah,
our
yeah. So
audience?
we're
Yeah.
doing this kind of cool. I shot it about a year ago, but it's this cool golf movie, actually.
Oh,
Like, I'm a pretty good
awesome.
golfer, but um, that Owen Wilson's doing it now, but we had kind of done it before, but not like they stole it from us. But sometimes you get tapped into this creative vibe, and our writer was really down for that, and I was like, let's do it. And I'm kind of a degenerate golfer got kicked off tour, coming back on tour. So that's a pilot we're working on.
Nice.
There's also this period piece, this World War II movie where I look like a Nazi, but I'm fighting Nazis. So it's kind
Wow.
of interesting dynamic where I'm rescuing this Latina girl that I fell in love with. And there's a lot of people that want to get me, corrupt, and then I just stay strong. And then,
I like that.
yeah, you have to watch that one. But yeah, there's a bunch of other things. There's this imposter society we're doing where it's the people take over people's bodies. It's sort of like
Ooh.
where you yeah, you don't know who's who, and things like that. So it's kind of interesting. And I was able to play like three different characters that got kind of
Awesome.
took over. That was cool. Yeah, yeah, there's a lot of interesting stuff, I
I'm
just think
good.
stay creative, just keep working on your craft, stay creative. And then if your time comes, your time comes. I mean, my dad taught me that, where there's a lot of luck involved, but it's also like, you got to just keep going, and you never know when you're in the right place at the right time,
Very
but you got to
true.
get out there. And nowadays it's a little different with social media and stuff, but I think physically being out there is very important, because
Hmm.
obviously we're interacting over, Zoom, but there really is something to be said for in-person stuff too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for coming on. It was a pleasure talking to you and hearing your journey. Definitely come back in the future anytime.
Of course, always, always. I appreciate you having me. And
Of course.
yeah, let's get your movie made too.
Hey, I'd like that. I'd like that. I have a lot of things I'm working on too. I'll call you for sure.
Perfect. I'm
For
always
sure.
here to serve, and just hit me up. Yeah, it's all
I
good.
will. I
Yeah, and
will.
also
Well,
go to mc24.com, and get out there and vote. We're trying to get, disenfranchised people to vote. We're trying to get everyone to vote. So we're doing a lot of cool things. So check out my Instagram at Zeke Hindle, ZekeHindle, and get updated there. And yeah,
vote, vote, vote. That's right. I love that. Absolutely. Thank you so much again. And thank you
of
all for
course.
listening. And always remember to live, love, laugh. We'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.